Is Las Vegas going to crash? Is there a flood of foreclosures on the horizon? Is the Las Vegas economy in trouble? In this video, I'm going to explain to you why many of these doom and gloom videos out there are nothing but conspiracy theory and fear-mongering. Just because one guy has a bunch of charts and data doesn't mean that he understands the context behind the data. So stay tuned as I break down each one of these falsehoods and explain which ones are bold lies and which ones are simply misunderstanding of data. So a few weeks ago, a client of mine directed me to a video that was so blatantly incorrect that I cited it in my last market update video. Now his name is Nicholas Jerley, I think that's it, who has a consulting company out of Austin, Texas called Reventure Consulting. Now, I'm sure he's a super nice guy, and I'm sure he's brilliant at whatever it is that he does for a living. However, there's a phrase, jack of all trades, master of none. I specialize in Las Vegas real estate. I've lived here for 30 years and sold real estate for 20 years at a very high level. Now ask me about real estate in Nantucket, and I'm utterly clueless. See, real estate is regional. You can't look at real estate the same everywhere because moving parts are unique to each location. Now, Nicholas put out this video called Las Vegas Foreclosures Coming Soon. In this video, he basically gives us 4 reasons why Las Vegas is going to crash. First is due to lack of job growth. Second has to do with impending foreclosures. Then he explains why certain areas of Las Vegas are even more exposed. Fourth and last, he draws a comparison between home values and income. So let's break down each inaccuracy right now. First, let's discuss jobs. He shows a graph illustrating that Las Vegas job growth is down 10%. Well, at face value, any fool can understand that if 10% of your population lost their jobs, big problems are on the horizon. That's simple. But what he's missing, because he lives in another state, is that Las Vegas isn't hurting for jobs. Las Vegas is actually hurting for workers. It's actually the complete opposite from what his data is reflecting. A chart only shows data. It doesn't explain the data. Data isn't subjective, it's black and white. The truth right now is that low-paying jobs are impossible to fill because the federal unemployment stimulus that expires on September 6th, many workers make as much money or more money just being on unemployment. Now, hadn't it come to town, spoken to any contractor, any landscaper, hell, any Starbucks manager, they'll all tell you they simply can't find people to work. One pool company out here is offering a $1,000 signing bonus for anyone willing to start working for them cleaning pools, man. We're talking about pool cleaners with signing bonuses. My landscaper can't even take on new clients right now because he can barely keep up with his current accounts due to worker shortage. So from a job standpoint, this is completely and utterly absurdly inaccurate. Not to mention the individuals that are refusing to work are people that typically don't even own property. Another insane comment he makes when he falsely claims that Las Vegas is in a recession and perhaps a depression. Now this is crazy. First, Southwest Airlines announced that they carried 1.5 million passengers to Vegas compared to 1.48 million in 2019. Look at luxury cars, clothing, retail, even try to get a cabana on or off the strip and find out how outrageous the prices still are. Who had the highest preseason ticket prices? The Raiders. In a recession, luxury items quickly become worthless. Again, this guy is looking at a chart instead of investigating and interviewing the people who would be most affected by his claims. Next, he shows us a chart illustrating how Las Vegas leads the country in delinquent mortgages. Now, while this is true, he fails to provide any contextual information. He fails to mention that all government-backed loans and forbearance now have a second mortgage wraparound option where the borrowers no longer have to make a payment until the first mortgage is satisfied. That came out, I believe, during the Trump administration even. Next, let's look at the numbers. We're freaking out about 17,800 homes. The truth of the matter is that about 2/3 of these loans will be worked out due to the government intervention and servicers who have already come up with similar loan workouts. I personally know a ton of people who took the loan forbearance and essentially just used it to pad their savings accounts. That now leaves 1/3, which equates to about 6,000 homes. Now, I don't know what this guy's background is, but during the recession, I represented 8 banks and asset management companies. Between myself and investors, I purchased around 100 homes directly from the trustee sale auction from 2009 to 2013. I assure you that I know more about the Nevada foreclosure process than this guy does. So back to 6,000 homes in question. Truth is, after filing the notice of default, only about, say, half the homes filed will ever actually result in a foreclosure. Either mediation is able to work out a plan, Or more likely in this market, the seller will simply just sell their home due to the amount of equity everyone has in their homes right now. So we're really arguing over 3,000 homes. Well, guess what? Our current inventory as of this week stands at just under 3,000 homes. We've got a dismal 1 month supply of homes. Even if you dumped every foreclosure onto the market right now, we'd still only have 2 months of inventory. Now here's the deeper dive. Once a notice of default is filed, it takes about an entire year to actually foreclose. That's pre-COVID numbers, mind you. Well, in order to flood the market with foreclosures, you have to flood the courts with notices of default first. This isn't up for debate. You can only foreclose on what's already been filed. Well, guess who's been tracking the notices of default every day since 2013? Yeah, this guy right here. So since we're foolishly trying to compare the crash of 2008 to today, take a guess how many foreclosure filings were in Nevada in 2010. 106,000. Clark County, which is Vegas, had 88,000 of them. Even when I look at the numbers from 2014, the notice of default filings were about 1,500 per month for the first 6 months of the year. Want to know how many were filed so far this year? In the entire year, we filled 654. Keep in mind, there's no moratorium on filing a notice of default. So 654 in the past 8 months. What about last year then? Last year, we filed 1,323. So in the past 20 months, we filed about 2,000. Well, you can only foreclose on what you've already filed. So if we've cleared off all the books right now, the most we can possibly foreclose on is 2,000. That's almost over a 2-year span. So how on earth can you crash our market with foreclosures in the next 6 months to a year? This is a complete lie. It's just fundamentally impossible. Now, if all of a sudden next month we file 1,000 notices of default and that continues for the next year, you can bet there's a crash coming in 2024. But all you have to do is look back at the notice of default to see what's absolutely possible down the line. Next, he shows us at about the 14-minute mark the fact that one zip code has almost doubled in value from 2016 to now. He draws the distinction that if prices double, it has to be a bubble. This is just foolish arrogance. Okay, I'll explain more in the next part, but he chose one of the poorest zip codes in the city where the median price in this zip code is about half of the median price within the entire city. What he's entirely missing here is that while home prices basically dropped 50% during the recession in 2008, it wasn't uniform. Some places retained values better than others, and some worse. In recessions, the poor get hit the absolute hardest. If you're a construction worker and there's no construction jobs, you're just out of luck. If you make 6 figures, you can find a way to make 5 figures. 10 years ago, you could buy a home for $40,000 in this same zip code. The damn land alone was worth more than that. Sometimes when you're so low, you only have one direction to climb. At the end of this segment, he points to the most affluent zip codes and concludes that these areas are more likely to be stable. So basically you're stating that wealthy people are more stable. Gee, thanks for connecting the dots on that one. The truth is that there's actually some falsehood there even. I live in this area he's talking about, and let me tell you, if there is a crash, some of these $1 million homes are in trouble. A ton of these brand new homes are grossly overpriced in comparison to the overall market just because they're new. If the market does crash 30%, that means the economy crashed too. Well, for the people who put down 10 or 20% on that new $1 million home, they've got a massive mortgage payment and are now underwater and can't even afford to sell. So, quite frankly, even the obvious isn't so obvious in reality. Last but not least, he tries to compare value to earnings. This is just absurd to me. His argument is that home prices have risen so high that people can no longer afford to purchase. Well, this guy's graph only goes back to 2007, at the very peak of the market. It literally took Vegas 14 years to recover the median price. 14 years. Meanwhile, we bottomed out in 2011. But as I just said, home prices were so cheap back then, you could literally buy homes for $40,000. Even I purchased a condo in one of the wealthiest zip codes for $26,200. I just checked and the same unit just sold for $149,000. I mean, even if the land was free, you couldn't afford to build those condos for $22,000. Las Vegas basically overcorrected back then. Why else did you see numerous hedge funds descend on Las Vegas to buy thousands of homes? Every guy with $100,000 was calling me up to buy either a second home, vacation home, or rental property. Simple math here. We overcorrected with roughly 50% decrease in home values. The worst housing crash in history, and Las Vegas was the worst of the worst. So if you drop 50%, you have to increase 100% just to get back to zero. It's like a car dealer selling you a $50,000 car with a $60,000 sticker price. Now, if this guy offers to give you 20% off, was that really a deal? I mean, you can tell your friends you got 20% off, but really you still paid list price. So when the housing market plummets and overcorrects, suddenly 5 years of 20% increases aren't that amazing. You're simply getting back to where you once were. Now, if you adjust median price for inflation, Vegas still has not recovered from where we were in early 2008 even. The last part of this segment is so laughable. Now, I don't know anything about Columbus, Ohio. I am sure it's a wonderful place. But to compare value of earnings from Las Vegas and Reno to Columbus, Ohio is not only arbitrary, but borderline fraudulent to me. Numerous tech companies are moving from Silicon Valley to Reno like Tesla. Countless amounts of wealthy Californians are fleeing the taxes and politics to migrate to Las Vegas and Reno. Many of these people are retirees who no longer have to work. Now again, I don't know crap about Columbus, but I've never heard of anyone talking about cashing out and retiring in Columbus, Ohio. I haven't heard a peep about tech or emerging industries investing in Columbus, Ohio. Maybe compare us to Austin, Texas, and let's see, compare us to Phoenix, Arizona. Don't compare Vegas and Reno to Columbus, Ohio. In the end, it boils down to this. I'm sure Nicholas is a great guy and he's only trying to illustrate concerns. But for you guys out there, before you believe everything we say on a video, take a moment to consider the actual source. I love analytics and data. It helps me visualize trends and confirm what I'm seeing out there with my own two eyes. I mean, who do you trust more? A guy who reports on football or the athlete playing football? If I wanted to really know what's going on in football, I'm going directly to the source, not the guy asking the source. In this case, I don't blame this guy for drawing conclusions based on data. But if he actually took the time to come here, investigate what he's discussing, and speak to property managers, realtors, contractors, and get a history of this town, I guarantee he would never make this video if he's an honest person. Well, that's it for this casual chat. If you like this content, please check out my monthly videos where I break down all the data and analytics that matter and explain why or why not it's actually relevant. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the next one.